Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the pre-release notes for patch 4.6, so let's get into it. 4.6 is going to bring a new feature, a new Planeswalker, and some card updates to Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest. These are all things that I am very excited about, so let's see what we've got. So first thing is we're going to have the quest journal and daily quest system implemented in Puzzle Quest. If you were wondering from the home screen, we've got this little new content coming soon. And for this new content, my guess is that this is where we're going to see the daily quests, right? Because it says we're excited to announce the daily quest feature coming in the next update. So down here on the bottom, once you've claimed your daily doodad, you're going to be seeing the quest system there too. And so what those quests are, I don't know. I know that there's a version of quests in Marvel Puzzle Quest. I'm not quite familiar with how that works in Marvel Puzzle Quest, but I see this just as an opportunity for us to have the opportunity to have more specific things to do in the game on a daily basis, and then ultimately to get more rewards from that too. So we've been seeing a general decrease in rewards over the past few months from events, and so hopefully this will help to counteract that a little bit. I really like the idea of daily quests. I'm very excited for this feature, and I'm looking forward to them telling us what some of those quests are and what the rewards are too. We're getting a holiday card. We get a new holiday card every year. This year's holiday card is a super cool card, actually. So this year's holiday card in paper is Top Deck the Halls. So I'm going to guess that in Puzzle Quest, we're going to see a version of this too. It's a red-white enchantment. So in Puzzle Quest, it'll be a support. And it has decorated cards in your hand have Miracle. So decorated cards are going to be the full art cards. Those would be things that you would get, for example, from Fiblethip, right? So we have the option for like these whole full art cards things, right? And so all of these would be examples of decorated cards in Puzzle Quest. Miracle in Paper Magic is when you draw this card. If it is the first card you have drawn this turn, you may play it for its miracle cost instead of its normal casting cost, which means that usually you just get to play it for like super cheap. So I'd be interested to see how this works. Maybe like if you draw a decorated card, it gains half mana, or like the first decorated card you draw each turn gains half mana, something like that. I could see that. I think that would actually be a very reasonable implementation of this card. And then it has at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 12 or more decorated permanents, you win the game. So my guess is for Puzzle Quest, it'll be something different. So if you control X or more decorated cards, something happens. What that something is, I don't know. Maybe you get a whole bunch of loyalty, maybe you do damage. Nonetheless, this could actually be a very playable card. It's actually really cool. So we're getting a new Planeswalker also. That new Planeswalker is going to be Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears. Now, this Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears is going to be another blue-black Ashiok. The mana gains for this Ashiok are going to be a little bit different. It's going to be +4, +4, +2, -1, -1, instead of +5, +5, -2. In general, I like the +5, +5, -2 a little bit better, but I do really like this Ashiok's abilities. So ability 1 is Night Terror. Create a Night Terror token. Destroy the top 4 cards of each player's library and draw a card. So the Night Terror token at max level is going to say when a creature card enters any player's graveyard from their library, your opponent loses 2 life. And then the Lesser Night Terror is going to be the lower level version of this token. So that'll be like rank 1, maybe rank 2. And that'll have when a creature card enters your opponent's graveyard from their library, your opponent loses 2 life, right? So the primary difference is that with the regular Night Terror, it's when a creature card enters any player's graveyard, whereas the Lesser Night Terror is just going to be the opponent's graveyard. But nonetheless, it's also going to destroy 4 cards from each player's library, and you're going to draw a card. So getting that Night Terror token down is going to be really sweet. And then having another Planeswalker that's going to just destroy cards from the top of the library is actually really nice. And I thoroughly love that ability, that Night Terror ability, right? It's kind of like going to mill half the cards of Liliana Untouched by Death, who is one of my go-to walkers. I use her a ton. She's like definitely in my top 5 used walkers. I use her a lot. I'm not saying that she's the best walker in the game. It's just I really like her playstyle. And so she destroys the top 8. This is going to destroy the top 4. But with this, you also are going to draw a card, and you're going to have this persistent source of your opponent losing life. You've then got for the second ability, Sculpt from Ashes. Sculpt from Ashes is going to return the first card from target player's graveyard to your hand. That card gains full mana. Then, if that is not a creature card, your opponent loses 6 life, and their first creature gets -6/-6. So that first creature getting -6/-6 is a permanent -6/-6 buff. I really like this ability. I do wish, though, that with this ability coming out, that they would implement a feature that lets us see our opponent's graveyards. Simply having this ability is really cool, but if you don't know what you're going to be getting from your opponent's graveyard, you're probably not going to use it as much on your opponent's graveyard. Now, I don't like playing with my opponent's cards very much, but there would definitely be times where my opponent might have something like a Ruinous Ultimatum in their graveyard, and I'd be like, oh yes, I would like to take that for free, thank you. But beyond that, like, you can see whatever the first card of your graveyard is, and then you just get it back with full mana, and then you can also use it as removal. So I love that ability, especially on a black planeswalker. I mean, it's just fantastic. And then the third ability is Never Ending Slumber. Destroy the top 6 cards of each player's library. Return up to 1 of each different support from all graveyards to the board under your control. Now, I have like a love-hate relationship with that ability right there. So with all of Ashiok's abilities, you're going to be dumping a ton of cards into the graveyard. And you're probably going to build some kind of graveyard deck around this Ashiok, is my guess. And so you're going to have a lot of ways of getting things into the graveyard. And so your opponent's probably going to have a lot of things in their graveyard. But any good deck is going to have gem conversion. And since any good deck is going to have gem conversion, that means that if you're not playing against another white or another blue or black walker, you're going to start to pick up a whole bunch of gem conversion in colors that you probably don't want. And they just come straight onto the board. That being said, you're also probably going to get a whole bunch of other super sweet goodies. Like, you're going to have games where you pick up stuff like Fiery Emancipation, or, like Embercleave, or other really big powerhouses like that. So this is a super sweet ability. I like it quite a bit. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But the Night Terror is definitely my favorite. Now, with all 3 of these abilities together, I like that this is more of a generic Planeswalker. Like, you could use this without having other cards that rely on the graveyard, and it would still be solid. With current Ashiok 1, I don't find myself using it all that much, even though it's an absolute beast. It's a powerhouse. It's one of the strongest Planeswalkers in the game. But I don't find myself using it as much because it's like a very specific play style. And I know that this sort of is too, because it's like relying on the graveyard instead of exile. But we just have so many more things that let us get things back from the graveyard than we do for getting things back from exile, that I feel like this is going to be a lot more flexible of a walker. I'm thinking of using this with stuff like Garuda or Eerie Ultimatum, or even Gasp Otrimi, which is guaranteed going to drop 3 creatures for you into the graveyard, and is also going to make it so your opponent loses 6 life. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this walker. I think it's a fantastic addition to the game. Now, we've got a whole bunch of card changes, like a whole bunch of card changes. And you'll see that all of the card changes here at first are all Origins cards. Now, I want to say that there's Riverglide Pathway. Yeah, this thing is not an Origins card. That's a Zendikar Rising card. I didn't mean to go home. I meant to go to the cards. Riverglide Pathway, for those of you who didn't know, is in an odd state just because you've got all the pathways, and they're all 9 mana except for 1, and it's 13. So Riverglide is it's 9 now. Had its base cost reduced from 13 to 9. I don't know. It's 9 here, but I remember when I was looking at the patch notes, it was at 13. So I was like, what? But beyond that, now here's where we're gonna get to see some differences in the cards, right? So we've got some changes to a bunch of Origins cards, and then we're gonna have some changes to story mode, which are going to be pretty big. And then we're going to have some changes to the Daxos versus Kalemni event, just the decks that you can use and the sets you can use and stuff like that, and some bug fixes. So Let's go over the card changes first, right? So boop, 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 you went too far down, Althazar, too far. So the first one is Eyeblight Assassin. So Eyeblight Assassin is a common. It's going to be an 8 mana card instead of a 10 mana card. I mean, that's useful for new players, I guess. I mean, I don't think you're really going to use Eyeblight Assassin very much. There aren't very many of these cards that I think many people are going to be using in general, right? So Dark Dabbling is going to become a 7 mana card that's going to restore a creature's toughness, and then you draw a card. But what I do like about this is I like the idea of it, right? So the general idea of this is that we're going to have our cards from Origins being a little bit better. And so with them being a little bit better, that means that it's going to make the set more accessible to new players. I hope that this also means that we're going to see a change to the Origins Planeswalkers at some point. They desperately need that. Erois' Champion is a card that I actually quite like, especially for pauper decks. And so this thing going down a mana is definitely nice. I wish that it went down a little bit more, but nonetheless, like it's still solid, right? Guiltleaf Winnower is going down from 16 mana to 12. This is actually going to make it a much more reasonable like pauper card. But instead of me going through every single one of these cards, the biggest change here to me is actually going to be with Pyromancer's Goggles. Pyromancer's Goggles is already a good card. It's a card that you might even use as it is at 25 mana. So it being changed to now be 21 mana instead of 25 is pretty sweet. I mean, it's like I said, it's like a strict buff, right? It's a card that you might already be using anyways. And now you've just got even more reason to use it. Like the only like downside to that is that it's not going to be 25 mana for like Narset. So if you're using this in a Narset deck, that means that you can't discard it to fully charge Chromatic Orrery or Ugin. But nonetheless, like that's such a minor thing that's really not a big deal. So there's a few other changes to some of the cards from Origins in general. It's just lowering the mana costs across the board, and yeah, I really like that. So we're going to see adjusted and decreased AI difficulty on encounters 1, 4, and 8. I didn't personally find any of the story mode encounters to be super difficult, but I'm also like okay at this game. So for newer players, I can definitely see that being a useful shift. Some of the cards in all of these decks also got changed a little bit, which is pretty cool. So I'd be interested to see what those are going to look like. And then Nissa Sage Animist's custom deck is going to get changed a little bit. So you're going to have different cards in that Nissa Sage Animist custom deck. So all of this is good stuff. I think that it would be really good to see a little bit more of an overhaul of story mode. I'd love to see just generally more story mode levels come into the game so that we had some more PvE content that we could just sort of passively do. Like it would be really cool if along with the events and stuff that come out, like, you know, Coalition and PvE and PvP kind of things, if we also had like a new set of story missions every set instead of just like the tutorials. I think that'd be really cool. Daxos versus Calamity is getting a bit of a shift. So now the deck restrictions now going to include M21 and is going to exclude M20. So M20 is going out, and you're now going to be able to start using M21 in the Daxos versus Calamity event. So the biggest changes here are going to be just with regards to being able to use you know, the M21 cards instead of the M20 is like it's not super huge. I mean, you can use Grim Tutor in Daxos, which is a really useful card. But other than Grim Tutor, like there aren't any like extreme powerhouses. Dark Hatchling is a low-key super good card that I would definitely be using in Daxos. I know a lot of players who really like Curse of Fool's Wisdom, which is a pretty solid card. And then as for Calamity, yeah, that's her name. Calamity just get like even more scary, so I can't say that this is like a super huge win all around, because M21 was like the Lord's gift to red, and so now Calamity, which is already winning all the time, is getting Fiery Emancipation and Chandra's Incinerator and Goblin Goliath and Terror of the Peaks and Brash Taunter and Warstorm Surge and Double Vision, and I think you sort of get the point. Like, Leafkin Avenger is kind of worthless for Kalemny, but nonetheless, like she's getting a lot of weapons. So, yeah, I would love to see Daxos win for all of you guys. I'm still the only person in the whole game who has Necromancer's Covenant, and so it's a very good card. It's a card that I think that you guys should all have in your collections. But yeah, nobody has this right now but me. So I'd love for more people to have it, is the moral of that story. We're getting some bug fixes, some really, really important ones for that matter. So the first one is Goblin Goliath. Goblin Goliath is an incredibly powerful card. Goblin Goliath currently, when you trigger its gem, is going to give your creatures permanent double strike instead of double strike until end of turn. Supposedly this fix is going to make it so that Goblin Goliath is not going to give permanent double strike, which is good. Temple of Triumph is being fixed. Instead of just converting white gems, it's now going to trigger more gems, right? Murder Investigation is going to be fixed. There's an issue where the game would crash with the human soldier gaining an evergreen. The Karavek, there's a loop that's fixing a loop with Karavek on the opponent's turn. Basically just no to infinite loops, right? So we're going to have fixed an issue where the identity objective was not correctly counting match gems in a Timeless Voyage. If you played a Timeless Voyage this past weekend, you probably are pretty well versed with the idea of that top node not properly giving you all of your gems swapped or gem matches as gem matches to the objective. That's supposedly being fixed. They're fixing an issue with the Magician objective, where it's counting supports with cost 9 or less toward the objective. Fixed a soft lock. I was going to say Fost Slock, but I mean, I don't know where that came from. Anyways, fixed an issue where a soft lock would happen when fetching a transform card with Ashiok's Nightmare Harvest ability. There's a lot of different issues with like the transform cards right now, so hopefully that's going to fix more issues than just that. It's going to fix the assault objective on the Zendikar Expeditions trial of the Shatter Skull event. I believe that the assault one is the having creatures attack and not properly letting tokens count or something. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Fixed an issue with the third ability of Teferi. Oh, thank goodness. So now only the first match on your turn is considered for gaining an extra swap. So yeah, this one, like, if you've played Teferi Master of Time lately, you'll notice that you very rarely get the extra swap, especially if you're playing gem conversion. So hopefully that actually is going to help. And then fixed an issue with Nissa of Shadowed Bow's Vanguard, where it would only allow the player to use its activated ability if the passive ability was triggered. So if you have Nissa of Shadowed Bow's Vanguard, it's going to be fixed now. Which is nice. And then if you don't have it, it's going to become available from Fiblethip soon, so you can keep an eye out for that too. So they're going to be posting Ashiok's progression for leveling very soon. But overall, I think this is a really good patch for the game. I'm surprised that there's only one like sort of little thing in it, like for example Ashiok exclusive thing. Just there have been so many exclusives in the vault. And we've got quite a bit of time between now and the next set. So we'll have to see what else comes into the game. I would imagine that we'll probably either see another patch in January or February, or maybe we'll just have to tide ourselves until the next set. But honestly, a lot of good stuff here. I'm really excited to see how the quest system is. I like the direction they're taking by changing some Origins cards and making them a little bit better. And I love the addition of a more multi-purpose blue-black Planeswalker. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.